At Strategic Planning Group, our investment program is rules-based. Rather than making decisions that are based on emotion, we have 4 rules that dictate if a change is needed to your portfolio. Rule number 1, the 7 to 10-year rule. We work with you to determine how much you will need to draw from investments to cover expenses over and above Social Security or any pensions you may have coming in. If we learn that you need $100,000 a year in addition to Social Security and pensions, then at least $700,000 to $1 million will not be exposed to the risks of the equity markets. Rule number 2, the debt-to-equity ratio rule. This rule goes hand in hand with rule number 1. We need to determine your risk tolerance and need for income to cover expenses. By doing so, we can determine how much exposure you can have to the equity markets. We work with you to come up with a predetermined balanced mix of debt investments and equity investments called the debt-to-equity ratio. Once we determine your ideal ratio, we balance back to it every 90 days. For example, if we determine that 50% of the portfolio should be invested in debt and 50% should be in equities, and the ratio is showing 48 to 52%, we will move 2% out of equities to keep your target ratio in place. Rule number 3, diversification. The idea behind this rule is that you can't have all your eggs in one basket. You can't be chasing what is hot and what's being promoted over the media. We set up a diversified portfolio where you have exposure to many different categories on both the debt and equity side of the portfolio. This is checked every 90 days and acted upon if necessary. Rule number 4, performance. The mutual funds or ETFs you have invested in must meet certain criteria or they get replaced. For example, if you are invested in a mid-cap growth fund or a mid-cap growth ETF, every month we use filters and algorithms to evaluate every fund and ETF in that category to see if there is an investment that better meets our criteria. If there is, and it is a tax-sheltered account, we replace the fund or ETF at the same time for every client. If it is held in a taxable account, we calculate your specific tax consequence to determine if it mathematically makes sense to replace the investment. Every 90 days, we send a recap of any trades we made that quarter, with a link to schedule a phone or in-office meeting if you wish to discuss. For more information, call 781-444-9010.